lyssnar på Militärsnack, podcasten där militära saker blir lätta att fatta.
Jajamän, då har jag den stora glädjen att presentera ännu ett avsnitt av Militärsnack. Idag ska vi prata med en kille som både är historiker, åklagare och militär. Och jag som pratar heter Henning Svedberg och på andra sidan micken sitter...
I vanlig ordning, löjtnant Andersson.
Du är som vanligt lika välkommen.
Och det är ju du med, alltid.
Tackar. Ja, löjtnant. Vi har ett litet spännande avsnitt framför oss och det här börjar ju likna väldigt mycket en följetong på att vi har väldigt mycket intervjuer.
Och vi har ju ännu fler i röret. Vi har ju hittat så mycket spännande människor här nu som vi måste prata med och vill att folk ska lyssna på, så att det kommer ju vara några sådana.
Är det ett lathetstecken från vår sida att vi inte vill prata så mycket själva?
Nej, det ska jag inte påstå.
Nej.
Det är ju inte så att det kräver ju energi detta med, så att säga, och tid.
Ja. Och du pratar om tid, och när du pratar tid så hittar jag ett epitet eller en storleksordning av tid som är dag, och då är dagen idag fredag, och då vet du vad som följer. Vad har du för öl i glaset, löjtnant, denna fredag?
Idag har jag faktiskt, du har haft den här i ett avsnitt, det är jag helt säker på, men jag måste ju göra min version av det.
Absolut.
Det är rököl. Jag har ju druckit en rököl i ett avsnitt som heter Hälsinge rököl.
Ja.
Och då vet jag att du drack en som heter Schlenkela.
Just.
Med reservation för uttalsfel. Och den här har jag också provat. Schlenkela Rauschbier då. Som är en Rauschbier, alltså en rököl från Bamberg i Bayern.
Just.
Och där är det väl relativt vanligare med rököl än vad det är i resten av världen just då. Och vad är då en rököl? Ja, men det är ju en kalljäst öl, alltså en lager egentligen. Men att man har rostat eller rökt malten innan man gör ölen. Och det här skapar ju en extremt god smak. Och jag tycker ju att den här Hälsinge är god, men det här är väl på något sätt urmodern kanske, jag vet inte. Det har jag säkert fel i, men den är väldigt gammal och traditionell. Den ligger på 5,1%, en halvliters, så en långhylsa, fast det är en flaska då. 27,90 på systemet, köp och drick, prova. Alltså det är så gott.
Det är ju lite av en sån här bucket list öl som man måste ha provat.
Den är ju fantastiskt god, alltså det är len och god med lagom mycket röksmak. Så...
Det är lustigt att du tar dig till Tyskland och Bayern där jag brukar vara, och jag nu tar mig till Mellansverige. För jag hamnar i Mellerud med en Melleruds utmärkta pilsner.
Norrlänningarna hade sagt att du var i södra Sverige, men...
Ja, det stämmer, så är det ju. Men ja.
Vi åker till Mellerud. Ja.
vi får se vad vi vill om mina geografikunskaper där, men jag tyckte att det var lite emellan. Men okej, skitsamma. Här pratar vi 15,90 på bolaget, 4,5%. Maltig smak, inslag av knäckebröd, honung och citrusskal. Och jag tycker att den är riktigt, riktigt härlig. Laid back pilsner.
Jag har inte provat den, men jag har ju druckit deras paradpilsner flertalet gånger. Men,
den ligger på 6,0 va?
Jag tror det är 6,0. Den är riktigt bra. Ja. Men den ska vi inte prata om nu, utan...
Men vi ska inte prata om öl riktigt. Vi har en gäst som står för dörren här. Ja, det är den litauiske mannen Robert Joudka som är, vad är han? Han är åklagare i ekonomi, i affärsrätt, affärsjuridik. Jag är dålig på översättningarna. Han får presentera sig själv lite här.
Ja, det blir alltid bäst.
Och skälet till att han är här är att han är historiskt intresserad och är väl historiker i någon form där. Och han kan Ryssland. Och vi har ju nu 2 saker som händer i vår närhet, och det är det att Putin hotar med kärnvapen och att han gör en partsmobilisering. Så jag tänker, vi kontaktar Robert och hör vad han har att säga om saken.
Det gör vi. Vi ringer Robert.
Ja, då har vi Robert Joudka online här. Very welcome, Robert. How are you?
Hello. All great. Thank you.
Thank you. You have a pretty impressive CV, a telltale of knowledge on your part of Europe and its vicinity. Could you please tell our listeners who you are?
Well, by trade, I'm a business attorney at law. I'm also an active investor. I'm also an active volunteer military serviceman. And by my hobby, I'm a historian, so to say. So it's a mix of everything, as you have already told.
Could you tell me where you live and where you work?
I live in Vilnius and in Tallinn, because I'm half Lithuanian and half Estonian. So actually, I live in both these cities. So most of the time still in Vilnius, but also in Tallinn as well. So I'm truly Baltic in that sense.
Very good. Very nice to hear. And you, Robert, you have been on one of my shows earlier. I had a podcast on the Ukrainian matter together with Peter Meyer. So we have seen you before, yes. So we will continue on this matter regarding Russia and Ukraine.
Perfect. Yes, let's do it.
Now you put yourself on your own words and yourself on your expertise on this matter. And we are mainly to talk about the current events, but please cast your light on any similarities and or differences with the Soviets that we were so afraid of and the Russia we see today from the viewpoints of being a neighboring country.
Well, both were totalitarian, both were autocratic, both were, unfriendly, both were not really cultured, both were aggressive, both were expansionist, both were revisionist, both were suffering under the deep complex of inferiority. But the difference is that Soviet Union had about, if I remember correctly, 340 million inhabitants. Russia today, or Mordor, as I should call it, is around 120, 125 million, big or strong or sizable. So essentially that is the biggest difference. The other potential difference was that still, the Soviet Union comprised of 15 different nations. Obviously Russians were dominating, but still there were a lot of other nations. Not to mention the same Ukrainians who were, I would say, a backbone of Soviet military in its time. So and also technological advancement. So a lot of research institutes and everything were situated in Ukraine and in Belarus, in the Baltics, so to say. The potential of the Soviet Union back then was based not only on the potential of Russia, obviously, which they always say that it was, but in fact, a lot of things and technologies were originating actually from other countries. The same Ukraine, for example, the Antonov plane. It's a fully Ukrainian production, for example. The T-64 tank, also fully Ukrainian production. Even the, if I remember correctly, the engines for the Mi-type helicopters, also fully Ukrainian production. Talking about Ukraine a lot. In Lithuania here, there were also a lot of various institutions, research institutions established by the Soviet government, to kind of work in the fields of laser technology, communications, and other areas. So essentially, all that has been lost essentially on Russia after the kind of downfall of that evil empire. So at the moment, in fact, both scientifically, technologically, by the number of inhabitants and by the number of like technological advancements, I would say that Russia has fallen behind Soviet Union. I mean, comparatively, of course. Also, the other thing was that Soviet Union was an extremely poor country. I mean, the level of poorness in Soviet Union was unfathomable for any Western person. So essentially, I was born in 1977. So I remember the Soviet time quite well. So I said, I remember very clearly that me and my mother were standing in winter for either 4 or 8 hours. I don't remember. It was an extremely long time in line to get toilet paper. There was nothing to eat. Literally, getting a banana was something only a very selected few could get once per year. So essentially, there was literally nothing to eat, and everything was kind of put into the military complex. I mean, by some accounts, up to 50 or some say even 70% of GDP went to military, industrial complex in the Soviet Union times. So this was the one area which they kind of tried to prop up, and obviously they didn't succeed too much in the end, but still they tried. And in Russia today, they are comparatively much better off, which means that they are not able to invest so much into the military industrial complex anymore. So the population of Russia is not ready to live in such abhorrent conditions as they used to live like 30 years ago. So as I said, depriving them of these kind of, let's say, usual things that they have been getting used to over the 30 years is big, political and social turbulence. So what I'm trying to say is essentially, since the society of Russia today is much more wealthy comparatively to the Soviet Union times.
Yes.
The people on the individual level. It means that this society is actually weaker because they are not ready to sustain that hardship that war brings with it. Soviet people almost never had hot water anyway. So, if you deprive them of hot water, nothing changes. Today, if you deprive people of hot water, they wouldn't like it too much. Government will be to blame for that. So back then, everybody went to the military anyway. It was like 100% mobilization anyway. People didn't maybe like it, but there was no kind of big political uproar against that. Now we see that there is a difference. So what I'm trying to say is that essentially the society in Russia has changed, and for our benefit, it has become weaker militarily.
Yes.
Especially long term.
Is there any signs that the sanctions that we're putting on Russia is starting to work? You told us about hot water and such, but the sanctions that Europe and the world has made on Russia, do you have any information about if it works, if normal people start to feel the sanctions?
I am sure they are. I am sure they are, and the more they will. Sanctions are a long-term, kind of player instrument. It's they don't come into effect immediately. You need essentially years to feel their effects. As said, it's again a stupid example probably, but in this, if you talk about GDP doesn't actually mean anything. In the Second World War, the GDP of Soviet Union actually grew. But it didn't mean that the people were living better. So that is the big nuance. In that sense that the GDP figures may not fall drastically, but that does not mean that the people are retaining their level of life they used to have before it. So essentially, the sanctions are felt, and obviously the sanctions are felt very much in the industrial area. All the optotronics, electronics, motherboards, lasers, you name it. So all these have been imported, and even if you look at Russian armor and tanks and other equipment that are being destroyed now in Ukraine, they often feature like French or German or Italian equipment in there. So not to mention the ultrasonic missiles like Calibre. They are very much based on the components built in the West. So theoretically they could be substituted with Chinese ones. That is probably the biggest question mark, whether they will be, whether they can be, whether they will be, and whether the Chinese will agree to that. So that is the biggest question mark. And a lot will depend on that. We probably don't know the answer, and we'll not know it until it actually happens. So this is the biggest kind of black horse in the area. But otherwise, in the military-industrial complex, they are extremely hard pressed. Even after the year 2014, after the first Ukrainian war, they had really, really big trouble, producing new helicopters, for example, because as I mentioned, the engines were produced in Ukraine. So and the technology was there. So it's really tough, and therefore we see the situation that they are trying to revive the old T-65, I guess, yes, tanks. There, from the old storages, because the new ones, it's a thing people don't think about often, but let's say the new T-72B3, the modernized version, the engine is totally different. All the kind of internal systems, engineering systems are totally different. So essentially, you have an older version T-72 tank and the newer version T-72 tank, and they might look the same, but they're not interchangeable. Even I cannot confirm that fully, but I heard that even the cannon, the round, is different. The newer version does not. The older version does not fit in the newer version. So essentially, you might have different versions of T-72s, but they're not interchangeable between themselves. So therefore, they needed to take out these old derelict, Cold Era tanks from their storages because they were like simple. There was very few things that can break there. So and then they drive. They don't have any optotronics, any kind of thermovisors or anything, thermovision equipment, but they drive. So that was the kind of quick fix, and it shows that yes, they have huge logistical issues, with everything, not to mention, production of new elements, but repair of existing ones, and changing the equipment on the front line. There have been numerous accounts from Russian, or ORC, as they should be called, prisoners of war, that essentially they have two types of armor there. The ones that don't drive but shoot, and the others that don't shoot but drive. So essentially, that is the situation. The level of technical maintenance was always very low, and even in high developed countries, supplying and sustaining and maintaining equipment in the field, it's definitely not easy. I've spent the whole weekend now in military trainings, and essentially all the small things that are readily available, you don't have them in the field, and it just doesn't work. And it's kind of essentially peacetime. You can go and buy them, in a way, but you need them here and there and now, and not in 2 days or in a week, So and then things break down, constantly, as everything that can break down will break down, and everything that cannot break down will also break down. So that's how it works in the field, So it is a huge challenge in that sense, and then it's getting worse. It's getting worse.
I can see that a country that has been deprived of large amounts of their engineers and manufacturing facilities need to regain them, and they lack some of the, as you said, of the weapons, and their quality is not very good. But haven't we seen that the Russia is low on fighting capabilities in Ukraine, and also very low on logistics? What's your opinion on this?
Well, of course, yes. As Napoleon has said, amateurs speak about strategy and tactics, professionals speak about logistics. and the really smart people talk about morals of the army. So to say. So yes, I mean, definitely logistic. I mean, the whole logistic system of the Soviet and Russian army is based on railways, and they cannot live without railways. Therefore, all their let's say directions of attack are directly linked to railways. They cannot sustain their offensive or even defense properly without a proper railway connection. So because they use huge amounts of everything, of equipment, of rounds, of fuel, you name it. So delivering that by truck is really difficult, tough, and it takes time, and the quantities are meager in comparison to the usage. So of course they have huge problems, especially in the Kherson region now, where the bridge connections have been cut. So they have a very big army group there. Some say 30 to 40 battalion tactical groups, maybe even growing after this new mobilization. They need supplies, and they have only one line of supply over the Kakhovka dam, which could not have been destroyed because it would destroy the dam. So essentially, and flood the whole region essentially. So Ukrainians cannot do it, but Russians are not able to supply their tactical group there in the Kherson region. They just cannot do it, at least not properly. And everywhere else as well. It's shown that yes, I mean the personal equipment of the Russian troops is of a very poor level. I mean, so and from February 24th we saw the best of the best Russian troops there. I mean, we saw the elite of the elite, and they were not equipped like with something that would impress anyone. So imagine what is happening now when kind of the raw kind of reservist meat is being conscripted. So there have been pictures on the web that they are going into the exercises or war. With the old 1891, the so-called free line rifles, or трехлинейка in Russian, the ones that were used in the Second World War and the First World War, So essentially, so that is the equipment they receive, So no thermovision, no night vision, no even communication devices, drones you can only dream of essentially. So talking about the broad kind of distribution on the battlefront. So yes, I mean, and the biggest difference between the Ukrainian and Russian situation here in supply, let's say of these small things, is that Ukraine or the Ukrainian armed forces are a mix of public and private initiative. I mean by that the public initiative, the public funding and money ensures that, you have a lot of quantity of the big things. But the big things, often lack these small nuances, like, a small thermovision camera or a small drone or a small pouch or a small this or a small that or a small whatever, anyone who has been to the military know that the small things are everywhere and they matter a lot. Without the small things, nothing works, literally. Or works very badly. So the private initiative and all the volunteers and the private monies and the private investment and all these international private volunteer organizations, they supply these small things that are comparatively cheap, but you need them, and without them it doesn't work. And in Russia, nobody does that. So there is no private small tactical on the ground element of I don't know, supplying you with a hot water boiler or whatever, something stupid that you need, So life is really miserable without it. So that is the big difference.
So essentially, more people is just more people. Since you lack the guns, you lack the technologies, and you lack the logistics, more people is just more people.
Yes, and again, so. Everybody's kind of saying, yeah, what is happening now? Yeah, big mobilization. I mean, mobilization has been happening in Mordor or Russia, already after the February 24th. Everyone, they are saying now officially that reservists will be called upon. I mean, that is a total lie. I mean, all the reservists have been already called upon before. So everybody with at least some military experience who had some value, has been already called upon. So what we're seeing now is a blanket, let's say blanket mobilization of everyone. And the figures, that are being given us, like 300,000 or us, the Russian population, again, are totally false. I mean, essentially, the 300,000 is just an empty figure. The actual numbers, according to what I have heard, is that essentially you will have at least 3 waves of mobilization, each about 300,000 big. So essentially, there will be at least about 1 million new people mobilized. Question is whether they will manage that, and then how they will manage that is open. So maybe the first wave might be mobilized, actually. Second, third, depends, we will see. But another matter that everybody forgets is actually that mobilization in Russia always means revolution. So if you look back at history, so essentially the first revolution, let's look only 100 years ago. The first revolution happened in 1905. Why was that? Because, the Russian Empire back then had a war, or kind of started a war with the Japanese in Manchuria, in northern China. Back then lost it. And all the disillusioned soldiers came back and started the revolution. That was in 1905. The government managed to suppress it, but still there was a lot of democratization after that. The second big conscription was in 1914, 1918. I mean, the First World War. Again, 1917 we have revolution. So the third one was in the Second World War. So that went a bit differently because they were being literally attacked by Germany back then, and they were victorious. So it was a bit different story. So, but if they wouldn't have been victorious, I'm sure that conscription would not have helped the government in Moscow. So that is the actual reason why Putin and the current gang in Moscow actually is or has been very much afraid to announce mobilization, because you are essentially giving weapons to people, and that is the biggest difference between democratic countries, between free societies and not free societies. That the freer the society, the bigger the amount of freely held weapons in the society. Switzerland is the freest society in the world, and essentially everyone has a weapon at home. So North Korea is probably the least democratic society in the world. Nobody has a weapon at home or anywhere. So Russia is obviously also not free and not democratic. So now giving weapons to masses of men, essentially, who might have their own ideas about what is good and what is bad, is risky, to say the least.
Yes. You're talking about risky things, and I have there's something I've seen here. Now people flee Russia. They're all men. They're at least somewhat experienced, which you told me they weren't. They were soldiers in a way. And in their age, they're all likely to be considered to be of reasonably good fighting standards. Now, I've seen loads of people talking about how to absorb this fleeing mass of deserters into Western Europe and the world. And absolutely none, I'm seeing not one, that's seeing this being a potential act of a broad daylight Trojan horsery. And we in Sweden and many other countries have seen that Russians in the Soviet era had stockpiles of guns and preparations of weapons in plausible targeted countries. What's the real life danger on this event?
Well, yes, it's a very viable threat, and definitely, I mean, all the countries like Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, we are very resolute on that question. It's the borders are closed, full stop. Definitely, it is a clear fifth column, a clear Trojan horse. Thousands upon thousands of Russian men of fighting age with unknown motivations, so to say. Definitely, it is a threat. And generally speaking, if you are so afraid and you don't like the situation in your home country, so go and change it. I mean, it's in your hands. It's this Russian way of running away from everything. Putting your head into the sand and running away. So definitely, it's we are very resolute on that question. I mean, no treatment of these, let's say, military avoidees as actual refugees. They are not refugees. They are just, I said, young orcs fleeing from the front. Nothing else.
And now also, Putin is showing his teeth, threatening the world and Ukraine with nukes. What's the likelihood of this taking place?
I don't know. I was never too much afraid of that. I think it's highly unlikely. I mean, likelihood is, my personal opinion is, I don't know, maybe 10-15% of that. The answer, question why? I mean, there are many levels of that. But first of all, when somebody says that he's not bluffing, it means that he's bluffing. Yes. so that is point one, because the human brain does not understand the word no, So in that sense, that is one element. The other element, Putin is not. I mean, the structure works like that a single person cannot push a button and something will then fly off. There are at least, as much as I have heard, eight people in the line of command until something actually starts flying. So it's not that simple. First of all, second of all, any use of whatever type of nuclear weapons would make things only worse for Russia.
Yes.
So I mean, I don't purport to say that they are reasonable people, but on the other hand, they are not fully unreasonable as well. So they are calculating, So using tactical, nuclear weapons will not win them anything. Essentially, will make everybody even more angrier, and the result will be that literally, Moscow propria will be, destroyed in the end. Because that is a total game changer where literally, like, everybody who has some common sense in his or her head understands that this evil has to be destroyed, because that is the final last red line for everybody, in the world to cross. And it's not only West. We should also talk about India and China. So they also understand that this nuclear deterrence and nuclear balance is a very, very kind of touchy thing. You cannot disbalance it, because once it is disbalanced, you will not bring it into balance easily. Mm-hmm. And use of nuclear weapons on a larger scale, strategic scale, it means end of us all. So it's a kind of lose-lose situation for absolutely everyone. So I don't believe that. Also, another element that is quite interesting, but very realistic. I am sure that there are a lot of secret services, Western secret services, whatever secret services in the Russian military and strategic structures, and as it has been said by Alexei Arestovich, the advisor to Ukrainian president, that it is way easier for the West, if you like, to make some people in the chain of command millionaires than to cope with the results of the nuclear disaster. So in that sense, That is also another thing that I'm sure the Russians are calculating upon, that they actually really cannot fully trust at least, their own people inside their systems. So because, military, generally speaking, is very, very upset, if not to say pissed, about the political government in Moscow, and they understand that they will be blamed for all the misfortunes of the army, but on the other hand, they are being forced to do things that they would not normally do as military people in this campaign. So there have been a lot of military blunders from the very beginning that were politically decided and forced upon them. So essentially, there is growing discontent. Whether it will turn out into something, I am not sure, because I said, this country, which people call Russia, but it should be called Muscovy, is actually having a very long tradition of kind of not revolting when one should be revolting. So I would not be too optimistic about internal revolts there, but that all will not go lightly for them is also a fact. So and the nuclear option, I would say it's a form of desperation. So when you have nothing else to talk about, nothing else to threaten somebody with, you then say, "Oh yeah, we'll bomb you with a nuclear bomb." So it's I would say it's an empty threat.
This what you say is I can see very much of it in this. The Finnish president Sauli Niinistö, he said on CNN that after his talks with Putin, that Putin has gone all in, can accept no defeat, and that this is decisive. And he also said that Putin has enough on his hands with Ukraine, and in a foreseeable future will not focusing on anything else. It's just got too much on his hands.
Yes. So he's going all in now. He's literally, his personal life is at stake. So there is no way out for him. It's either victory, which is highly unlikely, or death for him personally. One way or the other. And here I would actually be very unpopular and probably not mainstream in saying, and please now listen to me, what I'm trying to say is that essentially I'm saying that we should be, in a way, praying for good health of Putin. Why? Because he will not be changed with another person who is like democratic or freedom-loving or whatever. The other leader there will be younger, stronger, more aggressive, and smarter, and will be doing the same things in a smarter way. I don't believe that this country has any potential whatsoever for any democratization, as it is now. So in that sense, this old and kind of stagnating person on the throne is actually in a way better for us than a new, smart, energetic, younger person. Some kind of out-of-box thinking in this.
So if you look into your crystal ball, what's the likely end of this war, and how will it affect Russia as a whole?
No, there are, many people ask me that. And here I have two scenarios. Program minimum is that all the lands of Ukraine that have been occupied, including Crimea, are liberated. That's program minimum. Program maximum, I would say that is destruction of Moscow as a city, wiping it off the face of the earth, and therefore, I'm using the words of the Roman senator Cato the Censor he lived in the times of Punic Wars, and for 20 years, whatever he was saying, wherever he was saying it, and whoever he was saying it, he ended all his speeches by the words "Ceterum censeo Carthago delenda est," meaning that, among other things, Carthago must be destroyed. So now I changed that saying into Moskva delenda est. Among other things, Moscow has to be destroyed. So that is the program maximum. I am looking for, because Moscow has been for the past 600 years, maybe even 800 years, if you calculate, the center of evil, the center of cancer in our part of the world, and it has never changed. The forms changed, but the essence is always the same. So it's not called murder for nothing. It is the center of evil in there. And it has shown that consistently for ages. And whether there is a Tsar or a president or a Grand Duke or an emperor or a general secretary or a president at the helm, the essence is always the same. Always. So the only solution, unfortunately, is to cut out the cancer, and the cancer is Moscow. That's it, unfortunately.
Is there a program mid-level?
Program mid-level is that actually there will be a change, an internal coup in Russia, and the regions will start to split off of Moscow, and yes, that might be the program medium.
A kind of revolution, or that the smaller,
yes,
or the smaller states start to
split off, yes, like far west, Vladivostok, Caucasus. We see essentially big, almost a revolution in Makhachkala, in Dagestan. Tatarstan in the center, also not happy. So there are a lot of minorities, national minorities in the current Russia, more than we can expect, and actually they are. Let's say now carrying an unproportionate burden of this war, because their people are being mobilized and then forced into the front first. So like people from Buryatia, Yakutia, the same Dagestan, Chechnya, etc. They are being sent off to the front first, and not people from Moscow. So they are not really happy about that.
So if we go with the program minimum, that Ukraine takes back Crimea and Donbass, what will happen then? Will we see another war in like 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, or?
I'm afraid so, yes. The only thing that Russians are very well capable of is learning from their mistakes, military ones especially. So yes, if we let them be and let them recover, in 10 years, they will come back and be stronger, better, and smarter. And then we will have a real problem. Yes? So this is our now historical chance to not let it happen. And because if we do, we have seen this revisionist situation many times. Germany after First World War, classical example, they think that they have not been defeated, although they were. But the revisionists, they have been defeated but not destroyed. So that is very, very dangerous. The same could be actually said about the Cold War. They have been defeated but not destroyed, in a way. So the enemy has to be destroyed as a result of the war. And because if you don't do that, there will definitely be another war very soon. History has shown it time and time again. And not only with Russia, with many other countries, peoples. It's almost an axiom of history. If you don't totally destroy your enemy, he will come back to you.
How's the feeling among common people in the Baltics? I know, like in Sweden, we are not really super prepared for a war with Russia nowadays. People still are not too worried because we haven't seen the effects. You actually have been a part of the Soviet Union. So what's the feeling about common people, among common people? Are they afraid, or are they let them come, or?
Obviously, nobody wants war, definitely. Nobody's looking forward to it. But generally speaking, there is a kind of, I think, that's my feeling. This is kind of a quiet preparedness in a way. Quiet preparedness, because it's in a way, it's nothing new. We have been fighting Moscow for the past 600 years. So it's technically nothing new. During the last 200 years, every generation, now a part of the world, has risen up against Moscow has been, deprived of all their properties and goods, sent over to Siberia, etc. And then a new generation came, and then again we rebelled against Moscow. So essentially, it's nothing new. So for generations, this kind of gene of resistance is here, and the only thing I am happy to say that the only thing we have finally learned is that there is time to resist. You should resist before you are occupied, not after, because resistance after being occupied is always costlier, bloodier, and less effective. So you should fight, when there is time to fight, not after that. So I as much as I understand now, there is a broad consensus around the table, around across the board, all the social, political, etc. Levels are united in that sense, and the same feeling is in Poland. Essentially the same feeling is in Estonia. Maybe Latvia is a bit less, but still the same. So yeah. I mean, it's a broad consensus on that it should not happen again.
So the idea of a rally of the military of the old free blocs of the Soviet Union to rally in Moscow is a good or bad thing?
Meaning rally Moscow. So kind of like meet there in Moscow to burn it, or what?
We could divide Russia into the same way they divided Germany after World War II.
Yeah, well, essentially, I personally guess that is the only viable solution.
I can see a Swedish zone, a Finnish zone, and a Polish zone.
For example, yes, I mean, definitely. I mean, yeah, everybody says that. I mean, Germans became like normal people. But you needed 2 world wars, total destruction of Germany, occupation of Germany, and partitioning of Germany. Now Germans are like normal people, like everybody else, and there is not a single question about Germans not being like normal, in brackets. The same with Japanese. I mean, you needed 2 atomic bombs. Again, total destruction of Japan, occupation of Japan, and Japanese are now, normal people, like everybody else. So I am probably, seeing the things practically, not formally. This is the only solution. I mean, destruction of Moscow and partitioning of Russia into like 7 or 8 independent countries. And then they would be normal people like everybody else, and we will be able to trade and live peacefully and happy, so to say. I mean, so that's how it should be.
Yes. Robert, sir, is there any question you think that I have failed to ask you?
I guess we covered a lot of it. I don't know. The usual question is that how long the war will last. That is the usual question people ask each other oftentimes. My personal prediction is that it will last, unfortunately. It will last at least 1 year or maybe even 2 years, at least. Because, I mean, as much as we would kind of despise and be objective about the mobilization, it is still actually a lot of meat you have to grind over. So it will not be easy for the Ukrainians and for us. And we in the West, I mean, Scandinavia, Sweden, Finland, Norway, Denmark, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Poland, all the countries who are on the front, UK and US, of course, we should not change our minds. We should be very steadfast in supporting, and we should exert all the possible influence over France, Germany, Italy, so that they would also support and increase the support and not change their ways. So to say, this is what Moscow is counting upon. It's weakening of the resolve in Europe, and waning of support, military support for the fight in Ukraine, and they are counting on that. So this is the only thing that we should not do. I mean, we should continue and increase the support, give Ukrainians more weapons, high precision weapons, higher range weapons, all of that, aircraft, tanks, armor, air defense. I mean, all of it, and they can really do it. I mean, and by saying that, I mean, I will be now cynic in this sense, but it is the cheapest way for us as the West to proceed, because paying the blood price is always costlier than paying the gold price. Now we are paying the gold price. Ukrainians are paying the blood price. So if they fail, we will be paying the blood price next. So it's out of not even any ideals or anything, but out of pure self-interest we have to do it. So if nothing else counts, it's pure self-interest that we are and should be pursuing and should be increasing. So everybody, I mean, also on the personal level, not on the governmental level, individual level, I mean, everyone should, let's say, from their personal budgets, like designate a part of income, I don't know, 200 euros, 1,000 euros, 5,000 euros, whatever, according to the personal abilities, every month to the war effort, because that is the cheapest way to avoid war on our soil. If we don't do that now, in 2, 3 years, 5 years, we will have the same destruction and, misery that Ukrainians are having on their soil. Because Moscow will not stop. That was never their intention to stop. They want to change the world order.
I have one more question. If you would have a guess, what would have happened if the Russians succeeded in Ukraine early this year?
Oh, yeah. No, that's a very clear, actually, guess. They would have went for Moldova first. That would have been an easy target. Transnistria
and Moldova.
Yes, that's first. Second, they would have gone for the Baltic countries. I mean, for Suwalki Gap and eastern Poland. So that would have been their task to actually test and break up NATO as such, because their assumption was that nobody would go fighting for the Baltic countries, for example, in NATO, and as a result of that, NATO would have broken up. So that was their task. And the next step, they were again openly saying it everywhere. Actually, nobody just listens to that. Their next task was Berlin. Actually, they were openly saying that we are repeating now our drive to Berlin. So Berlin should be kind of ours. So they were saying that openly everywhere. Still are saying that actually. So yes, I mean, Western Europe, change of their world order. I mean, they wanted to kind of change the order in Europe at least, and maybe even in the world. I mean, or actually, the world order change was actually the main strategic goal, but the tactical task for that was changing of order in Europe.
So straight up World War III.
In a way, yes. I mean, so the assumptions were wrong. Moscow was assuming that everybody is weak, everybody is divided, everybody is not willing to sacrifice anything for anybody else, especially for some amorphous concept of freedom, and yes, I mean that they were counting on, and they were counting that everybody would crumble after the first signs of show of force from Moscow side. They were wrong, luckily, but they could have been right if Ukrainians would not have put up the fight. So Ukrainians saved Europe, as the Poles did save Europe from communists in 1920 in the Warsaw Battle. So now at the Kiev battle, Ukrainians saved Europe again. So that is how I view it.
Yeah, they are still in the process of saving us.
Yes, and they need all our support.
Before we end this show, and I thank you very much, I would like you to give us your final words.
Final words? Well, I will finish like the Roman senator, Cato the Censor. Moskva delenda est. Moscow has to be destroyed.
Very good, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And it's been a pleasure to have you here, Robert.
Thank you.
Thank
Indeed,
you.
the same pleasure for me.
Take care, goodbye.
Bye. Thanks.
Goodbye.
Ja, löjtnant, Robert har ju ingen direkt munter syn på vad som behöver göras med Ryssland för att få ordning på fredsbalansen i Europa.
Nej, det har han ju inte. Och han säger ju också att det är hans personliga åsikt så att säga. Men han presenterade ju också lite olika varianter. Han hade ju en level minimum och en level maximum och vi fick honom ju även att ta en mid-level.
Ja, just det. Ja, vi ska fortsätta stödja Ukraina och det tror jag nog är väl en del av poddens hjärta, så att vi säger nog inte nej till Roberts förslag och idéer.
Nej, jag tycker det var en bra intervju, mycket intressant och lite andra synvinklar på det från någon som faktiskt har bott i Sovjetunionen och bor nära nuvarande Ryssland och känner både historiens vingslag men även realiteten i hur läget är nu på ett annat sätt än vad vi gör.
Ja, Robert uttrycker sig på ett sätt som kanske inte vi gör i Sverige, men jag måste ändå säga att jag förstår precis vad han menar.
Ja, han är tydlig. Det är inget snack om saken.
Ja, vi brukar ju här ha vad skulle du som programpunkt, men den blir nästan till omöjlig att ha här, så att jag tycker att vi kilar väl vidare till nästa programpunkt.
Det gör vi. Och den stående punkten är ju dagen eller veckan i historien.
Ja.
Och idag är det då den 7 oktober.
Och jag får då av historietekniska skäl flytta mig till 8 oktober för att hitta en grej i nutid eller i historien som passar bra in. Och det är då USAs anfall på Afghanistan som var 8 oktober 2001. Och det här är då, det är mindre än en månad efter 11 september. Och förlängningen på det här hörde vi ju i förra veckan.
Ja, när vi pratade med Erik, ja.
Just, precis. Så att det är ju historiskt högaktuellt ändå.
Ja, precis. Och Erik pratar ju också om de 2 olika operationerna som pågick parallellt.
Ja. Jo, och sen vill jag slå ett slag för våran Facebook-sida, Militärsnack. Där vi har lite aktiviteter mellan avsnitten, att saker och ting händer och vi berättar vad som är på gång. Lite roliga grejer som vi hittar på och allt ifrån ordvitsar till bildhyss.
Jajamän, gå in och gilla så att ni får hänga med på uppdateringarna.
Japp. Ja, löjtnant. Med det ska vi tacka för idag.
Tackar vi för idag.
Då får vi önska alla en trevlig helg och ha det bra.
Ha det bra, tack så mycket. Hej då.
Hej.
Glöm inte att gilla, dela och gärna prata om vår podd med de vänner du tror skulle gilla den. Tack!